Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our 6th of 7 general RACs on CCO 2.0 rulemaking that we are holding during the month of August. This morning's Rules Advisory Committee is dedicated to a series of rules under our grievances and appeals section of the new rules. I know most of you have been with us before, but please humor me for those that have not, and let me provide just a little bit of very brief framework and context for this process, again, largely for those who have not joined in the last week or two with this. This rule right came from the recognition and need that the existing rules framework was not sufficient to support new rules and the alignment of new contracts as we prepare for CCO 2.0. To that point, we made a concerted effort to change and revise to improve readability and alignment with the contract, as I mentioned. In the context of readability improvement, by that we speak specifically to edits for brevity and clarity, removing duplicate content, renumbering to groups of like topics, and removing outdated terms, removing citations or typographical errors related to rules or citations that had previously been repealed, and renaming rules in a number of circumstances as we have this morning to improve the clarity and purpose of each rule. We've also moved to a construct of universal and local definitions. We'll speak to that this morning. There are a number of local definitions specific to grievances and appeals, and we have removed some content, and that is based on an evaluation and process and consultation with the Department of Justice in terms of bilateral rights and obligations between the state and the coordinated care organizations are typically defined in contract. Third-party rights and obligations, by that we often speak of our members, clients, and providers, are generally defined in rule, and this rule set provides a high-level structure for the administration of the coordinated care organization model. And we have repealed several rules as noted. I don't think that hits us this morning, however. And process-wise, we will take approximately a 10-minute break. I think probably around 10:30, 10:45. We'll see where the logical section break is there. And at that point, I will also solicit opportunity for public comment from members of with us on the phone today and the general public in the room. That public comment will be limited to 10 minutes. If there are 5 individuals participating, each will be afforded the opportunity to speak for 2 minutes. If there are 10 individuals, they will each be afforded the opportunity to participate and give public comment for 1 minute. I want to note, too, that the public comment is specific to the proposed rule changes today, and that during that comment period, it will not be an opportunity for persons to ask questions of us. Again, the purpose of that will be solely limited to offer comments on the proposed rules. Just a bit of housekeeping. If anyone needs, restrooms are behind me. Please keep anyone in the room, keep your phone muted or put it on vibrate at this time. Just a little bit more about the process before we begin. As Rules Advisory Committee members, this is an advisory committee and consensus is not necessary. Our goal here is to seek public input to the maximum extent we can and gather input and suggestions towards the edits or proposed revisions to these rules. My role today will be to facilitate conversation and discussion and to manage the clock. To that point, managing the clock, I don't know if it will be an issue today. We don't have as large of a group as we have had in the past couple weeks. I think we are somewhere between 20 and 25 RAC members today. We typically have been somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 for each meeting before. But to that point, should there not be time for you to offer your comment today as a RAC member and participant, there will be opportunity for you to provide written follow-up comment to us within 7 days of today's RAC. So close of business 1 week from today, next Wednesday. Written follow-up comment should be submitted to the CCO rulemaking inbox. That's the same inbox that you requested participation as a member on this RAC on, and that you have received the information and materials for today's meeting as well. So again, you'll have 7 days to do that. The next piece of this process, largely for the benefit of the general public in the room and on the phone, for you to understand what comes next. During the month of September, the Health Authority will synthesize and process all of the comments received through these general RACs and topical specific RACs and determine what pieces or elements or recommendations will be accepted. On or about November 1st, the Health Authority will publish in the Oregon Bulletin through the Secretary of State's office the final proposed version of rules. Those proposed rules will be out in the public domain through about November 18th, with the public hearing being held on November 15th. So that will be the opportunity for individuals not participating on today's Rules Advisory Committee to offer comment on the final version that this collective body has gathered to help inform of additional prospective changes. That is it for my housekeeping pieces. Let us start with introductions in the room. Today, why don't we start to my right, and then we will take roll with members on the phone.
Tanya Elmore, Quality Assurance, Oregon Health Authority.
Melissa Hanks, Deputy Project Director, CCO 2.0, Oregon Health Authority.
Kristen Downey, Providence. Janine Stevens, Oregon Health Authority.
Jessica Sayers, Pacific Source.
Robin Traver, Umpqua Health Alliance.
Holly Pettick, Oregon Law Center.
Donna Herbs, Healthcare for All Oregon.
Barbara Carey, Health Share of Oregon.
Dana Sterninger, Willamette Dental.
Alexa Lundgren, Cedar Hills Hospital.
Cynthia Ackerman, All Care CCO.
Bill Pushka, IHN CCO.
Stephen Shear, Care Oregon, Columbia Pacific CCO, Jackson Care Connect.
Sean Parkman, SEIU 503.
Oh, Sean.
Oh.
Thank you.
Good morning. Kim Steubenrau with Oregon Health Authority.
Go ahead.
And I'll call roll if I miss someone in the room. Sorry, just holler at me. First off, I just want to remind everybody that when you place your phone on mute, please place it on mute, not hold. We really, as much as we'd like to listen to music, it's very difficult to communicate in the room and on the phone when the music is playing. Joelle Archibald. John Curtis. Mariah Emmerich. Annette Fowler. Jarrett Hefner. Lori Hoffman. Heather Jeffries. Aaron Jolly. Gerald Lund.
Present.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that Aaron?
Aaron Jolly from Washington County.
Thank you, Aaron.
Gerald Lund. Michelle Martinez. Tamara Powell. Nancy Rickenbaugh. Haley Simpson. Ashley Smith. And Nancy Wood.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for that. So Aaron, it looks like you are the only RAC member participating with us on the phone. So as you've been a part of this process with us the last couple weeks, rather than my saying, can I see who is in the queue on the phone to wish to get into the conversation, I may just say, Aaron, do you wish to engage on this? Folks, again, process-wise, I think most of you who have been a part of this process, we will ask that when you speak, please use the microphone and state your name and organization for the benefit of people that are joining us by phone today. All right, let us get started with proposed rule 410-141-3875, Managed Care Entity Grievances and Appeals, Definitions and Requirements section. We will note that there were some additional updates provided to this that posted to the web on August 2nd. Those changes are captured in a one-pager that is easily identified, I think, on the right side column of the web page. If you do not have that, we will note what those changes are as well. So specifically, this rule, at a high view, the changes that were made, the inclusion of local definitions, revisions to the definition of notice of adverse benefit determination, to be consistent with federal regulations, as well as the clear articulation of prohibition of delegating adjudication of member grievances and appeals to subcontractors and provisions related to additional subcontracting. The actual substantive changes in this rule appear in 1, 2A, and 14. So while we have it open, we will hear all comments specific to this rule as it is written, but let us go through 1 and 2A, that is the entirety of the first page, and through the top of the second. Don't need to read this for you, but please pay attention and note the current version of definition of adverse benefit determination. And note in grievance, in addition, in that last sentence, grievance also includes a member's right to dispute an extension of time proposed by an MCE to make an authorization decision. And that 2A, which I will read to in its entirety for context, members shall MCEs shall establish and have an authority-approved process and written procedure for compliance with grievance and appeals requirements that shall include the following. Sub A, members have the right to file a grievance at any time for any matter other than an adverse benefit determination. I'll note that we have had several members of the committee in the past week who have indicated at specific points in the rule discussion their preference to have the agency or request that the agency identify in specific examples or instances where we would point out the grievances and appeals. I just want to note publicly that this is a catch-all in this statement. We still will take those other pieces of advice under consideration. Can I open for questions, comments, or feedbacks on these changes? I'm seeing 2 hands in the room, 3 hands in the room, 4, 5. And can I just check in with Aaron Jolly real quick on the phone?
There's more people on the phone that are in listen-only mode, RAC members. I just got a message.
So they need to put in the host code that was sent to them yesterday in the email?
Thank you for helping with that.
you,
Because we did have a delayed start, I'm going to go ahead and continue with participants in the room that wish to offer that. Robin, if you'll help message to whomever those people are reaching out, and we thank you for that. So in the room, who would like to start? I saw Dana Sterringer's hand go up. Let us start back there, then we'll come around this way.
And mine's just technical change. Small g at the bottom of the page, notice of adverse benefit determination means the notice must meet all requirements. That doesn't quite sound like a definition to me, so I'm wondering if it's meant to say means a notice which must meet all of the requirements.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. And let's, Jessica, if we don't mind, let's just work over it that way, and then we'll come around. So Barbara from Health Share of Oregon.
Yes. So under section 1 sub F, basically it says a separate notice must be sent to each individual who falls within this definition. And I'm not sure if you're aware that every time we send a letter out that has PHI in it, we need to send it first class, which costs about 50 cents. While that doesn't seem like a lot, it doubles the price of sending notices to members.
And you're speaking about 1BF, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, no, it's 1F, 1 lowercase f.
1 lowercase f at the bottom of the page. Thank
Correct.
you. All right.
Thank you.
All right, and that is your comment of record that you want to note that there is an additional cost associated with the mailing, just to do a listen check.
Yes. That's
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Can I just add on to that real
Sure.
quick? So Dana from Willamette Dental, I actually was wondering what that sentence really meant to impart, because I don't know any time that we've had to send separate letters based on anything. But if it's almost like they're calling out that there's an opportunity, that there's a situation in which you would need to send more than 1 letter to a member about a grievance.
Okay.
So this needs to be clarified.
Okay, thank you. We will get that. Tanya, is that anything you're able to?
I believe it's referring to the member and if the member has a representative.
So we would just send a letter to whoever sent us the request.
So if the member has a representative, you'd send it to the member and the representative.
I don't know that.
I mean, that's what the
But that's
intent is.
what this is telling us
Yes.
to do?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So we can work on providing clarity and
Yes, I think some
Written.
clarity to that would be good, because I don't
Okay.
know that that has been clear in the past.
all right,
Is
well,
that a new requirement?
that is our goal to provide clarity. I can't speak off the top of my head where that is new. I don't believe it is new, but I believe it may be rewritten in a way
Yeah,
that
that maybe calls
presents,
that.
yeah, which was part of the goal to, again, provide some clarity and conciseness in this, and we're doing that. Let's go over to Jessica Sayers from Pacific Source. We'll do a check, oh, apologies, go ahead.
Holly Oregon Law Center, and I would like to say that Gerald Lund, who's on the phone, is one of the members of the RAC. So I'm hoping he will chime in as needed.
I wondered if we just need to get rid of
And then in addition to what they were saying regarding clarity and consistency, oftentimes an ombudsperson or somebody in another role.
All participants are now in interactive talk mode.
A written request for a hearing on behalf of a client. They're not necessarily representing that client, and it is important that that clarity be there. And generally, in this rule, without going through number by number, the attorney that sat down with the rules along with me, we felt that there was a lot of ambiguity in the words that were there, a lot of vague language, reasonable efforts, timely, expedited, monitor on an ongoing basis, ensure properly filed. All of that is vague to us, and if it is vague to us, it is going to be vague to our clients who have poverty in their background, sometimes low education, often difficulty communicating.
Okay, we appreciate that. Thank you very much. Let us just pause for a moment and take roll and see who may have joined on the phone.
Hi, this is Annette Fowler from Cascade Health Alliance.
Thank you, Annette.
Nancy Rickenbaugh.
Nancy Rickenbaugh, and who else? I'm sorry?
John Curtis.
John Curtis from Jackson Josephine counties. Thank you very much. Did we have anyone else?
Also, Holly Simpson with Ocean.
Holly, thank you very much. We appreciate. We apologize we weren't able to get in. We are trying to mitigate some challenges we had yesterday. And Robin, thank you for helping bring these folks on board. All right.
Mariah Emmerich, EOCCO.
EOS.
Martinez, Trillium.
Slow down, people.
Slow down. All right. Michelle Martinez from Trillium, thank you. And who was the other individual?
Mariah Emmerich, EOCCO.
Thank you, Mariah.
Jill Rowe from YCCO.
And thank you, Jill. We appreciate that. So what I'm going to do after Jessica speaks, and then we will return to people in the room, knowing that we've had 4 or 5 additional members join us on the phone. I'm going to give them context. We are in the middle of reviewing 3875 grievances and appeals. So after Jessica speaks, I will see, or Robin rather, sorry. And if Jessica did wish to speak, we'll honor that. Then we'll do a check-in on the phone to see who onboarded with us to get in the queue, and then we will return to the room. So first Robin and then Jessica.
Robin Traver from Umpqua Health Alliance. So under 1 small b big G, members do not have cost sharing or copays. So we are curious as to what the applicability this is for Medicaid.
Tanya, are you able?
And then under E, the grievance means a member expression of dissatisfaction to the MCE. We request that you remove the "or to a participating provider" language, or clarify how MCEs, I guess if it's reported by a participating provider, if that's kind of what this is getting at, but we would only be able to document a grievance that was reported to us. So either by the member, or the member's representative, or the participating provider.
Yeah, we'll look into that. It may be the subcontractor. I'm not quite sure on that.
Oh, okay.
We'll have to look into that.
And then lastly, under F for member definition, we request that you just leave this definition applicable to the member only, and then have other definitions related to the member's representative in an additional section.
All right, we thank you for that comment. Let's recognize Jessica Sayers from Pacific Source.
Jessica Sayers, Pacific Source. This is in relation to 1E on the grievance definition as well. The definition refers to OAR 410-120 0 series, and that definition does not align with this definition either.
You're saying the definition in the general rules does not?
Correct.
And where are you speaking, Jessica? To?
1e, the definition of grievance.
All right, thank you. We will look into that. Appreciate. All right, let me do a check-in of everyone that has joined on the phone. Just by name only, do you wish to speak to this proposed rule change?
John Curtis.
All right, John, anybody else? Actually, John, let's go to you first, and then you're the only one, then we'll pick up in the room here. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm a little confused whether grievance includes complaint or whether complaint needs to be separately defined. I find its usage in other rules. It appears to refer to something similar. And then under the suggestion, or on the suggestion of redefining or pulling out member representative from the definition member, if that is to occur, I have a concern that that representative be afforded the same accommodation and access as spelled out in another rule.
Consistent with limited English proficiency or any of those kinds of needs. Is that where you're going, sir?
Correct. Accommodation.
Accommodations. All right. Thank you. We appreciate that. And Tanya is going to speak to your first question about the difference between complaint and grievance.
There isn't a difference. The grievance is a complaint. It's a member's expression of dissatisfaction. So grievance is a complaint.
Thank you. All right. By show of hands, back in the room on this side. Sorry. I'm seeing Cynthia. Was there anyone else? All right. Cynthia Ackerman.
Yes, Cynthia from All Care. I guess I'm seeing an absence of language. Ralph, you articulated at the beginning of this rule regarding subcontractors and that the CCO is ultimately responsible. I guess I'd like to see stronger language at the beginning, or maybe in a definition.
Okay.
So it's really important.
Sure. So we do, it's in 14, and it's what we'll be picking up. We're only really doing the changes on the first couple pages now, and then we'll be talking right through that, and I think we'll put you first in line on that if you wish to speak to it. All right, was there anyone else in the room that's just on this initial piece? And we're seeing Barb from HealthShare, and then I think Oregon Law Center. Thank you.
I just want a clarification under section 2, sub F, and then large uppercase C and uppercase D. It was really not clear to me what this was supposed to mean. So for number C, we would like to, would we need to notify the member via appeal acknowledgement regarding this? That would be the only way we would think about notifying a member in advance, for sufficient timeliness there. And then on number D, again, it's very confusing. It seems like there could be issues with getting all of these documents to the member in advance. So for example, if the member's initial request was denied due to lack of documentation, and the plan has to take extra time to attempt to get the documentation from the provider, there wouldn't be a way to provide the entire case file sufficiently in advance of the standard resolution time frame. So does this not apply to expedited appeals as well?
Tanya, are you able to speak to that?
I'm not sure if it says expedited appeals, and I see what you're saying. It's something we'll have to look into.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Was there anyone else in the room? So I'm going to move us to the last substantive change here, and then we can open, though, if there are individuals that wish to offer any additional comments, broadly speaking, to this rule. The particular piece relating to subcontracting has been added in number 14. That is the last piece of this rule. Adjudication of appeals in a member grievance and appeals process may not be delegated to a subcontractor. If the MCE delegates any other portion of the grievance and appeal process to the subcontractor, the MCE must, in addition to the general obligations established under 410, 141, 3505, do the following: ensure that the subcontractor meets requirements consistent with this rule and the other series cited. Monitor the subcontractor's performance on an ongoing basis. C, perform a formal compliance review at least once a year to assess performance deficiencies or areas for improvement. And D, ensure the subcontractor takes corrective action for any areas of deficiencies that need improvement. I will stop there, and by a show of hands, may I see who wishes to speak? So I'm seeing Cynthia, Dana, Barbara, and apologies from the Law Center. I need to get you a name tent. And may I just do a phone check-in, name only, who will wish to speak to this? All right, let's go back to Cynthia Ackerman.
Yes, Cynthia from All Care. I like the rule. I like everything about it. I wish it was
More
closer to the beginning.
prominent? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. And we'll see Dana Steringer.
Dental, and I guess I would echo Cynthia's comments, but I think it just needs to be in a separate, is there a separate subcontractor rule?
There is, in fact, we did do that, but and maybe we take that back and discuss it, but in recognition of this effort that we've made to kind of put things in their relevant sections, that may be something we need to look at, and is it worth it to have in both places? So thank you for that, and we'll come back to Cynthia.
I would like to say it could go in both.
In both.
It's very important.
Okay.
And I wouldn't want to see it removed. It needs to be in this, but I would also like to see it in the subcontractors.
All right, thank you. So we'll recognize Barbara from HealthShare and then the Oregon Law Center.
So to note that in the original rule, the word final was in front of the word adjudication, and we were wondering why that was removed.
I'm not sure, probably.
I believe because there's only one level of appeal, so it would be the final. It's just to make it more clear.
And I thank you for that. Let's go to the Oregon Law Center, then we'll come to Jessica Sayers.
I was just going to make a comment on that. I was
okay.
in the contract work session for 2020, and that's the explanation they gave for removing final in that level, because there are no levels in adjudication. So just to confirm that.
Thank you for that. I'm going to recognize the Oregon Law Center and then Sean Parkman from SEIU, and then we'll do a phone check-in.
On number 14 that we were just discussing, and this correlates with 1A, I believe, a grievance that is not satisfactorily remedied is allowed to go to a hearing, but I don't know that there is any location within the rules that shows provisions for how a person filing a grievance, whether it be orally or in writing, may file for a hearing. It's somewhat ambiguous. We do have a regular process for requesting hearings, a regular form for that, and that currently is not listed on any of the grievance forms, and I couldn't find any indication of that in the rules.
So you're referring to, just to make sure I'm understanding, a member complaint?
Yes.
Oh.
If it's not satisfactorily resolved, I read into the rules that that it could go to a hearing.
I don't have experience with that. I wasn't aware that they could go to a hearing. I'm not aware of that.
Okay. And it was a language issue for us. We weren't certain on that, so thank you.
So we will capture that here, but we'll also ask if you are to submit additional comments in writing that you please articulate that as well. And we thank you. We're going to do Robin and then Sean. Sorry about that.
Robin from UHA. Under 14C, It indicates perform a formal compliance review at least once a year. Is there further guidance on this? Can we delegate this to the DCO to do their own evaluation? Or what is the process for that?
I will have to contemplate that. I do not anticipate delegated authority of a contractor evaluating their own performance, but we will capture the comment nonetheless. Sean, go ahead.
Sean Hartman, SEIU 503. So general comment related to these definitions, just a request to OHA to consider reviewing these definitions to ensure that there's sufficient call out for patient advocates of whatever type. I mean, we mentioned ombudsperson, hearing representatives, but thinking specifically about those types of folks that might have cognitive disabilities or just any general cultural or other difficulty navigating the healthcare system, that their grievance process might be need to be different or helped with various efforts. So are there the definitions of those types of supports and people in these definitions? That's the general question for review in the future.
So do you want to?
Well, I'm not sure if maybe I'm just not understanding as far as the grievance process goes, as anyone can represent a member, well, through the hearings process for sure, through the appeal process, they can represent a member with the member's signed authorized consent. Would that cover?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just having that, like, does that concept need a definition, essentially, of like someone representing someone filing a grievance, right? Or, you know, we've talked a lot about traditional health workers, their roles, and, you know, cultural translation, you know, what role, that sort of question. It's a general point.
Sure. So Sean, consistent with other comments that we've received about a potential request for a definition of member representative, could it be something where you're going that in addition to legal representative or whomever that individual might be, that upon a member's consent, another individual, I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I don't have a specific,
Sure.
I can't help you, like, it needs this word and it needs to be in this section.
Sure.
It's more of like a general comment just to be sure that that element of the grievance process, that advocacy element has sufficient definitional support in this section to provide clarity for especially those that are not familiar with the this whole process. This all can.
And we have definitions of member representative in both the general and the admin rules at the beginning of the rules. They could be more clear.
Contemplate that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm going to do a quick check-in on the phone. Anyone wishing to speak to this, RAC members only? I'm going to do one more pass in the room.
John Curtis, couple comments.
Okay, I'm going to recognize John Curtis, Cynthia Ackerman, and then Robin Traver, and then I'm going to move us along to the next rule. So John, go ahead.
Okay, in the 11A of the OHP complaint form,
Yes, sir.
again, confusion again on with complaint and grievance. Then I wanted to remark on the comment that was just previously offered on member representative, and that should also include a guardian for a member.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, I'm going to go. John, anything else? I'm sorry.
No, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to Cynthia and then Robin, then I'm going to close on this rule, reminding everyone that they still have opportunity to submit written comment if there was something that we did not speak to today in this particular rule. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Cynthia from All Care. I just got something regarding the gentleman's comment about a member's written consent. And the question also, they're asking, is it a power of attorney guardianship, conservatorship. There's a CMS appointment of representative form, so it does need to be clarified.
Okay, thank you for that. We will look towards that. Robin Traver, you have the last point or comment on this particular rule.
Robin from UHA. Are we opening up to questions for the whole rule now?
We can, but I'm going to try to keep this brief, and I think as noted from other pieces, time that we have opportunity to respond to questions that understandably may inform other questions does consume the limited time that we have for people to submit comments. So if you can frame your question in the comment of, if I interpret this to be correct, then my comment might be helpful in facilitating the conversation.
I will submit them in writing.
All right, thank you very much. All right, I am going to move us along to 410-141-3880, grievances and appeals grievance process requirements. At a high level, there was inclusion of requirements that notifications occur in the member's preferred language, reporting requirements and reporting member complaints to OHA specific to their race and ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, country of origin, and disability status. The notable changes in this rule are in number 1, number 4D, and that is generally speaking it. So we will pause and open for questions, comments, or feedback specific to this rule. In the room, I'm seeing 2 hands, 4 hands, 6. Do I hear 8? I'm going to do a check-in on the phone to see who would like to get in the queue on this particular rule. All right, I will check back on the phone. We're going to just work around the room, starting with Sean Parkman from SEIU, and we'll go all the way around.
Sean Parkman, SEIU 503. So general comment. To the entire goal here. As an outside person, it's going back to the point about people that need help navigating the system. It seems to me, this is the area where this is the description of the process and the requirements around that. It doesn't feel sufficient to me to describe that layer of help, how those, for lack of a better definition at this particular moment, those helpers get involved. How do they, how does one seek their support? How do you find a helper, and etc. That feels like this would be the area that you would describe that, but a lot of it has to do with letters, and that sort of thing. So maybe I'm missing one of the sentences here, just like wraps it all up. But for me, I didn't see that. So sure. I'm asking the authority to consider.
Okay, so appreciate that. And let me ask a question back, because I think maybe there may be some other folks contemplating the same thing. If the kind of materials and guidance that you are speaking of to help inform members is found readily available in member handbook, printed materials, things of that nature, in whatever the requisite language is for that member, do you feel like that meets the need that you're referencing, or do you have a preference that the same pieces of information, or at least a framework, be provided in the rule? I'm just trying to gauge.
No, I appreciate the question.
Sure.
No.
Okay.
For people with, the people that are the most vulnerable and have the least ability to navigate the system are the most likely to have a legitimate grievance, probably. Okay, so I'm talking about a level of engagement that's far beyond like a letter or a handbook.
Okay.
We're talking about, we're talking about cultural outreach. We're talking about, specialists. We're talking, language for, not just like, oh, I can have this translated to you so you can read the letter that's already written in a lawyer speak. But we're talking, how do you help a person that has difficulty reading, has difficulty speaking,
okay.
Navigate this complicated system? And, formal letters from one lawyer to another or whatever, this is not going to do it.
Okay.
So I'm asking the authority to consider really thinking about for most people, most of the time, this works, this is fine, right? I mean, you get the letter, read the letter, show up, it's fine. But there is a layer of very vulnerable people that this is not sufficient. And so I'm asking you to think about that layer of folks. And I'm sorry I don't have more specific.
No, this was good context. Appreciate. Thank you. We're going to go to Stefan Shearer from Care Oregon, Columbia. I'll let you do that.
Stefan Shearer from Care Oregon. Stefan Shearer from Care Oregon, Columbia Pacific CCO, and Jackson Care Connect. I had a point of clarification and also a comment. So the point of clarification is for 2B. How is preferred language being determined?
I believe that comes. I believe it comes across on the when they become part of your CCO. No, it doesn't. I apologize. I honestly don't. I don't know.
So I think the intent of that, and this was discussed in our RAC yesterday around care coordination, but an expectation that upon an initial screening or assessment of an individual at time of enrollment with your plan, that kind of salient information would be captured. So, but happy to take if you had a follow-up comment.
Yeah, so had a comment on 4, kind of A through C.
Okay.
And it looks like we do have some contradiction with language that's in the contract and your grievance resolution notice.
And you are speaking specifically to C?
Yeah, 4A and 4C.
4A and C. All right, we will look at that. I appreciate. Let us stay on that side of the room. Cynthia Ackerman, go ahead.
Cynthia from All Care. I agree. I think there needs to be stronger language regarding the civil rights piece of this, and it may be in the contract, I can't remember, but there were specific have-tos designating a specific person within the MCE to address the civil rights, and I don't see any of that language here unless it's elsewhere. I just think it needs to be specified.
In terms of a civil rights officer compliance? Okay, thank you for that.
Yes. And that aligns with CMS.
Okay. And continuing around the room that direction, I think Barbara from HealthShare.
Yes, we concur with Stefan from Care Oregon regarding the conflict between the contract and this rule, but specifically what we're asking is that this particular rule talks about oral grievances may be resolved orally or in writing or in the preferred language. The contract specifically states that the resolution needs to be in writing, and so we're really advocating that this rule says if it's given orally that we can resolve it orally. It helps with the one phone call resolution and getting things resolved.
Okay, thank you, Barbara, and Tanya's handed me a copy of that contract language, and we will take that offline and reconcile.
Great,
thank you. And continuing around the room from Oregon, Holly from Oregon Law Center.
Grievances and appeals are maybe the single most powerful means that our clients have resolving an issue to be able to sustain their public benefits. And I think the clarity is very, very important. On number 2, each for standard resolution of grievances, the MCE shall resolve each grievance and provide notice of disposition expeditiously. Really, this should be written and oral. And on number 4A, it says may provide its decision related to oral grievances in either orally or in writing. We believe it should say shall provide its decision related to oral grievances both in writing and orally, and of course in the preferred language. I've seen many times when people have received documents from Oregon Health Authority or from the Associated CCO that say if you need this in a different format or a different language, that's not going to help you if you are blind, if you are developmentally delayed, if you speak another language.
Understood. We appreciate the comment and feedback. All right. Staying on this side of the room, Robin.
Robin from UHA. Under number 1, section 1, we would like you to define promptly. It shall be promptly forwarded to the MCE by the authority. And then related to that, under 2B, we request that you add the language, notify the member in the preferred language that there will be a delay in the MCE's decision of up to 30 days, then insert from the date the MCE received the grievance. We want to make sure that we are not held to when the authority received the grievance.
Okay, thank you for that. Recognizing, I won't editorialize this too much, but recognizing that requests to define the terms promptly and things of that nature do become a challenge, because if we are to say 48 hours, someone will say that is not long enough or that is too short. And that begets an entire additional conversation. So we will take that comment to heart, we will evaluate it, but know that where we land is where we will land. And that there is some deference and some autonomy and flexibility that is provided to plans with the word promptly. And sometimes, it's the whole be careful of what you wish for because you might get it thing. And I'm seeing some verbal acknowledgments and head affirmations in the room on that. So we are happy to take that under advisement. But if we come back with a date or a time limit parameter, that will be held to. So I will just note that.
Authority having time frame.
By the OHA, though.
Yes.
This is an OHA one.
Right, so we will honor that if we set that. All right, Dana.
But I would just, this Dana from Willamette, I would also, I agree with that, and I think it mitigates it by saying that when that impacts us, because we're delayed in getting a notice, as long as we're given a time frame from the time we receive it, that helps to mitigate that promptly by OHA. And
Correct.
The OHA can get it to us as soon as they can.
Right.
And then our requirements don't impact us until we get it.
Understood, thank you. Cynthia.
Just this Cynthia from All Care, just inserting that language that the time starts when the MCE receives the complaint. I think it can be as simple as that. Does that work? Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to come back to Sean in the room, then I'm going to do a check-in on the phone.
Sean Hartman, SEIU 503. So related to the language discussion, preferred language, just putting in there that there are also standards and advice around plain language. So here we're talking about, I'm presuming that this is referring to languages such as Spanish or what have you, but there's also non-lawyer speak language, plain language, things that people can understand. And so I recommend that we also put a nod to, that there's intention that, plain language is a thing, that you can measure it.
Okay.
That's also part of the expectation, is that these are written in such a way that people are intended to understand it.
So consistent with plain language requirements. All right, thank you, sir. I'm going to do a quick check-in on the phone. Anyone wish to speak to this? Seated RAC members. All right, I am going to move us along to 410, 141, 38, 85. Some additions here include 1A, the notice of comply with formatting and readability standards, and language clearly written, sufficiently that a layperson could understand it to make informed decisions. And then the entirety of C, 1C, I don't need to read those out loud to you, but that is that it meets content notice requirements specified in 42 CFR 438.404 and the MCE contract. And rather than just stop there, we have identified what those elements are that need to be included in that notice, both for the both so that plans understand, and to some of the consumer-driven comments that we have received, so that people do have a full understanding of what the expectations are and what a valid notice would be. So I am happy to open for questions or comments at this time. Can I see by a show of hands first in the room? I am only seeing one hand in the room, two hands in the room. May I get a check-in by name only of people on the phone that wish to speak to this? If so, we will start with you on the phone first. All right, I think we will have our two individuals in the room. First Jessica and then Sean Parkman.
This is Jessica Sayers with Pacific Source, and my comment is on 4C, 4 little c. This is talking about the denial of payment and when the adverse benefit determination shall be mailed. This language has always been a little problematic because notices related to claims do not go out immediately. Those typically follow check runs and
I'm going to ask you to hold on for just a moment, Jessica. If we have someone on the phone who is not muted, please do so at this time. We're hearing your ambient noise. It's a bit of a distraction to those in the room. Thank you.
Shall I restate?
Yes, please.
Okay. So 4C, the denial of payment notices. I was saying that this language has typically been problematic because notices related to claims don't go out immediately upon adjudication in the system. They typically follow a check run cycle. So when payments are made to providers, notices go out to members at the same time within the required claims processing timelines. So I just asked the OHA to revisit that language.
All right, thank you. And Sean Parkman.
Okay, so Sean Parkman, NCIE 503. So one specific comment, which is in section 4, subsection B, or big B. Just, a thought of rewording it where the abstract person is not necessarily he.
Thank you for pointing that out to us.
And then secondly, in the same vein of my previous point,
and Sean, I'm going to ask you to hold on just a moment. I'm going to ask the individual, I don't know who it is on the phone, but please mute your phone, or if you are rustling your papers or typing on your keyboard, if you will please put yourself on mute. Thank you. Go ahead, Sean.
Asking OHA to consider, reading this, reviewing this rule, again, with the eye to this very vulnerable population, difficulty understanding the outcomes of the process that this particular part of the rule is describing, the notice of action, adverse benefits that really it's like, okay, we're sending you a letter, but it's like, and helping you understand it is kind of the missing point here. Perhaps that's less of a problem at this phase because there's a presumption that by the time they get to this phase, they have someone representing them, maybe. But I'm just putting that forward to consider.
Okay, we appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to do one last check in the room and then on the phone. Robin Traver.
Robin from UHA. Under section 2A, so it requires sending with the adverse benefit determination, hearing request form, MSC 443, and the notice of hearing rights. We wanted to ask what these forms provide more than just what's mentioned below, that the hearing request form OHP 3302, if it's necessary to have all of those forms, or if there's some redundancy there that we could potentially decrease mail waste, potentially.
I'm not sure I'm quite understanding. So you can either send the hearing request form or the 3302? Does that answer?
So are these forms, I believe, have the same information as the 3302?
Right, and the A and the B notes or between the two of them.
Or I see. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Not a problem. I'm going to do a quick check-in on the phone, and I'm going to move us along. Is there anyone on the phone that wishes to speak to this particular rule? All right, I'm going to move us along to 410, 141, 3890. Pending how long we go on this, we will likely take a brief break after this, at which point I will solicit opportunity for public comment. 410, 141, 3890. Grievances and appeals process. This version was revised on April 2nd, posted to the web. Some notables: this was rewritten to improve clarity, improve readability, provide clear articulation of how appeals may be initiated, and stipulations to clarify plan obligations. Those are largely found in numbers 2, numbers 4, number 6A, and items 9 through 11. Let us just stick with the first page at this time with number 2A and number 4. 2A, appeals may be initiated orally or in writing, subject to the following requirements. A, the MCE shall ensure that the member is informed that they must file in writing unless the individual filing the appeal requests expedited resolution. And 4, for standard resolutions of an appeal and notice to the affected parties, the MCE shall establish a time frame that is no longer than 16 days from the day the MCE receives the appeal. I will stop there and ask for a show of hands in the room. I'm seeing 3 hands in the room. May I do a check-in on the phone to see if anyone on the phone wishes to speak to this? All right, we will go Jessica Sayers first, and then I think back to Sean Parkman and whomever else.
Jessica Sayers, Pacific Source. This is in relation to 2A. My question is around submitting in writing. So if the member doesn't submit something to us within 60 days, or to the MCE within 60 days, does that allow us to dismiss the request or cancel it?
Right, so the member has 60 days to file an appeal, and if you do not receive the written appeal, then yes, you would dismiss it.
Okay, because if we received it orally, we would have something in our system outstanding.
Right,
So we would
if you
have to wait 60
receive
days.
it orally, I mean, at that point, you would speak to the member on the phone, do whatever is needed to help them get their written request in. But if you do not receive that written request, then yes, you would dismiss it.
Okay, can I ask that the OHA consider adding dismissal language to this section?
You can ask that, certainly.
All right.
We accept that comment. Thank you.
My other comment on this is that this was heavily discussed in the contract work session, so I would suggest aligning with whatever updates come out of that session too.
Thank you for that. Appreciate. We'll come back to Sean Parkman from SEIU.
Thanks. So I know we're looking at 2 here, but just tying together a couple concepts for the record. Same point. Number 1, a member or a subcontractor or a provider can file an appeal. So back to our point on the definitions of all the different definitions of people that might be helping, only these 3 can do an amendment or an appeal. That seems like a oversight because there might be members. Yeah, the helpers.
Thank you for pointing that out to us. And I think there was one other individual, actually it was Barbara. We can circle back as time permits, but I want to make sure we are giving everyone, was there anyone else in the room? All right, we're going to go to Robin, and then we'll go check in on the phone.
Robin from UHA. So in section 1, I think this goes back to those definitions as well. I think in the definitions, member included members representative. So if that is separated out to its own definition, then we would ask that member representative be put in this language in section 1. And then subcontractor, I'm not aware that a subcontractor can file an appeal currently. Is that allowable?
No, you're correct, and I thought we took that out.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that that's one we took out.
All right, we will check that. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Can I do a check-in on the phone before we proceed? Anyone that wishes to speak to the first page of this rule? All right, we will move to the second page. The notables here are 6A and really 9 and 10 and 11. 6A specifically, MCE shall ensure oral requests for appeals of a notice are treated as appeals to establish the earliest possible filing date. Unless the member requests an expedited repeal, the member shall file an oral Follow an oral filing as written, signed, and dated appeal. And it looks like we're missing a sub B there. I don't need to read 9 through 11 out loud for you. I will pause for a moment and take temperatures by show of hand who wishes to speak to this. I'm seeing two same hands that have spoken previously before, so happy to hear them, but I do want to give ample opportunity for anyone else in the room or on the phone to speak before coming back to these individuals. Anyone in the room besides Jessica Sayers or Sean Parkman? Anyone on the phone at all? Which of the two of you went last first?
Doesn't matter.
All right.
I think we're going to be the ones talking.
All right, go for it, Jessica.
Okay, this is Jessica with Jessica Sayers Pacific Source. This is in relation to number 10.
Okay.
The last part of the sentence around the MCE or the state paying for the services, that when a reversal, the decision to deny the services was made by the MCE or the ALJ. I would ask the OHA to add the authority policies and regulations specific to that sentence, where we would determine who is responsible to pay for those services.
All right, thank you for that.
And one more on
sure,
this page.
Go ahead.
This is 11 little v big D.
Okay.
This is an explanation that the member may be held liable for the cost of the services if the hearing upholds the denial. My question around this is pretty unlikely that that providers are going to be able to recoup this money from the members. And the other question is, how does the OHP waiver come into play in this situation? Because if the provider did not have a waiver for those services to actually bill the member, then they technically can't bill the member.
And we may or may not be able to speak to that. I don't know that I can, so we need to follow up there. So thank you for the question, though. Let's do Sean, and then we'll go down to Dana.
Sean Hartman, SE 503. Same comment on 6 as on 1.
Okay.
It's basically just, a member or the provider, just align with whatever you decide and the definitions about how we're going to address the helpers, as I call them.
Okay, thank you. And we'll recognize Dana Steringer.
So yeah, and this is Dana with Malone, and I think 6A could be, 6A and C could be rewritten to be more clear, because I think similar to the comment I think Jessica made about saying that there is a dismissal process if the written notice is not provided in the time frame, could be added to that section as well. But I think it's just kind of choppy the way it's written, so
okay.
It might be a little more clear.
We'll clean up.
And my other one is on 11.
Okay.
The second sentence says notice shall contain as appropriate the same elements as the notice of action. And I think that was it left in there from when we switched to the new adverse benefit determination name. I think notice of action can come out.
Yes, thank you for that. Appreciate. All right, I'm going to do a check-in on the phone. Is there anyone on the phone? Last opportunity, last call to speak to 3890.
Hi, this is Maria Emmerich from EOCCO.
And Maria, hold on just a quick sec. Anybody else on the phone wish to speak to this? All right, the floor is yours.
I would just like to reiterate what was said in the room regarding 6A and the practicality for the MPEs. I think that this needs to be looked at and addressed in a more thorough, practical way.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm going to move us along to 410, 141, 3895. Grievances and appeals expedited appeal process. There were really not substantive changes made here beyond clarification of requirements to send notice of appeal resolution and hearing request information forms as required. That is noted in number 4. I don't anticipate a lot of comments on this, but there may be some. We will try to move through this one fairly quickly, and then we will pause for a brief break. Before I recognize Jessica Sayers from Pacific Source, is there anyone on the phone that wishes to speak to this? All right, I'm seeing Jessica and then Robin Traver.
Jessica Sayers, Pacific Source. This is really quick, I promise. 3 little b, this talks about making reasonable efforts to call the member and the provider. I would ask the OHA to consider using the word notify instead of call. Not all of our members have phones.
Thank you for that.
This is Robin from UHA. Under 3C, mail written confirmation of the resolution to the member within 3 days. Should this be business days?
We will check on that. I am not certain at this time.
And then the same comment for 3 little e, big B.
Acknowledgement of either business days or
Yeah,
not.
business
Okay.
days
Or calendar. All righty. And last call from Sean Parkman.
Sean Hartman, SCAU 503. So same comment, just for the record, around language, it's the provider or the member. That occurs, I think, in 1.
Okay.
See, member or provider. Same point,
Member representative.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Or whatever the definition, whatever you come up with for the definitions section, that rule set needs to be reflected throughout here then. So then it happens again in like 3 big A, the member can do this. But again, if the member is,
Gotcha.
not able to do that on their own for whatever reasons, so it's assumed that we mean the member or their, but if it's a rule, let's be clear.
Thank you for that. All right. I'm going to move us along. It is 10:36. I'm going to propose that we take a 10-minute, 9-minute break. We will resume at 9:45. Before folks get up in the room and make too much commotion, can I just do a check-in? General public members on the word off. General public individuals listening in today that wish to offer public comment at the conclusion of this meeting during the time of 11:50 to noon. May I hear your name and organization if you wish to offer public comment? All right. Hearing none, we will resume. We're going to go for a 7-minute break at this point. We will resume promptly at 10:45. Thank you. We're going to go on mute in the room here. Advisory Committee on Grievances and Appeals Processes. The time is just about 10:48. We only have 4 more rules to cover. There are not a lot of substantive changes in them. We will note those as we have earlier. Unless we begin to butt up against the 12 o'clock hour, I will let conversation go and flow. We are here, so this is the opportunity for you to submit your comments to us. So the short answer is we will be here as long as it takes during the course of the next hour and 10 minutes to hear and address all comments received. I did not receive any request to speak for public comment either in the room or on the phone, so we will suspend the public comment process for today. Resuming with 410, 141, 3900, revisions to improve readability and clarity. 2 changes of note here in this rule. First one under 1B, the second under 2B. I will read those for everyone's benefit in the room and on the phone, and then we will just open for discussion on this rule. So 1, the MCE shall have a system in place to ensure that its members and providers have access to appeal for MCE's action by requesting a contested case hearing. Sub B, if a provider filed an appeal on behalf of a member as permitted in OAR 410, 141, 3890, the provider may subsequently request a contested case hearing on behalf of the member in accordance with the procedures of this rule. 2B, the member may not proceed to a hearing without first completing the appeal with their managed care entity and receiving written notice that the MCE adverse benefit determination is upheld, subject to the exception under Section 3 below. B, if the member sends a contested case hearing directly to the authority and the authority determines that the member qualifies for a contested case hearing, the MCE shall submit the required documentation to the authority's hearings unit within 2 business days of the authority's request. Those are the 2 substantive changes in this rule. Let me do a check-in first on the phone, because we will go to you first. If so, can I hear just by list of names anyone that wishes to speak to changes in this rule? All right, may I see by a show of hands in the room anyone that wishes to speak to either of these 2 changes? We're going to go to Holly first with the Oregon Law Center, and then Sean Parkman, SEIU, and then anyone else that wishes to speak.
Sean is echoing many things I have to say, and I'm trying not to be duplicative here. So I appreciate it, Sean. In number 1, the use of appeal in these rules can be confusing. The rule uses appeal interchangeably with requesting a contested case hearing. It's confusing because rule number 410.141.3875.1 lowercase a specifically defines appeal as a review by an MCE of an adverse benefit determination. We would suggest following how Social Security does it, using appeal as a generic non-defined term, and call the MCE's review of its own decision a reconsideration. Then use a request for a hearing to refer to the review of the MCE's decision by an independent adjudicator.
And Holly, what is the generic term that Social Security Administration uses? I'm sorry.
Reconsideration.
Reconsideration. Okay, thank you.
Yes. There were a couple of other comments. On number 3, it says, let me find it over here. It states, if after a member properly files an appeal, yet earlier in the rules, it states, I'm so sorry, I'm having trouble with the microphone, that the MCE shall offer assistance. And if assistance is offered, a reasonable accommodation is made, they should all be properly filed. And I think that needs to be noted. And the MCE should affirmatively be offering that assistance until it is filed properly and timely.
Thank you. Appreciate. Let me come back to Sean and then anyone else in the room or on the phone.
Thanks. Sean Parkman, SEIU 503. So following along the same theme, we have now some cascading consequences from the previous conversation, right, that are now flowing in. So first of all, in 1, insurance members and providers have access. So again, you know, this representative,
okay,
or whatever it is the authority decides to call that, or if we're wrapping it all into members or whatever. But I do think that there is a meaningful difference there, like ensuring that there's a process in place so that members, providers, and then their helpers, or whatever we're going to call them, each of those channels would be different, right? And so they each kind of need their own access plan, if you will. Similarly, in 1B,
okay,
you can see here it says if a provider filed an appeal on behalf according to the rule that we just discussed. Well, if we change the rule that we just discussed based on the previous conversation, now that needs to be reflected here.
bring this into alignment.
Exactly. And there's several other examples of that through this rule, where we say a member is filing this, a member is doing that, and then the member will, so again, if the member is needing or having help through this whole process for various reasons, language, culture, cognitive impairment, etc. It's kind of symbolically we're sending it to the member, but literally we're sending it to their helper, you know, and engaging them. So it's just, how do we reflect that in rule so that it's an expectation of access to these people with special needs?
Thank you. And Tanya, did I hear you right earlier? If not, apologies, that we do have a definition of member representative in general rule that we should take a look at as to this, or potentially leverage something from the long-term care service and supports world where the term member representative is frequently used.
Yeah, in the general rule, it just says representative. In the OHV admin rules, it says member representative.
Okay.
But it does need to be.
So it's an opportunity for us to, okay.
In general, I think it's worth a sort of substantial look at where that definition is, because we're talking guardians. It can get complicated, right?
Absolutely.
We're talking some various special populations. We're talking guardians. What is this, a DHS caseworker for a high-risk youth that's in foster care, maybe, that also has cognitive development? You know, I mean, you know, we're talking some complex cases here.
Appreciate you're illuminating a broad spectrum of populations and individuals that might be there to assist those people, so we do appreciate that. Can I do a check-in on the phone? Is there anyone that wishes to speak to this rule? We will do one more round in the room. Anyone by show of hands? All right, we will. Oh, one more comment, follow-up from Sean, sorry. And I saw Bill contemplate a half a hand raised there. So
Oh, it's up.
It's up. So after Sean, we'll go to Bill Bushka.
Okay, so I just kind of want to clarify this point. So there is the intention of literally clarifying who can do the thing. And there's another intention here, which is that the rules reflect the intention that the process be open and accessible to not just lay people, but people that are, lay people that are helping people with complex problems that have come in contact with the system and are advocating for them. So it's kind of literally who can do the complicated steps, like can they actually literally do the thing, and then also the intention of the process being accessible to non-lawyers, essentially.
Okay, thank you. And we will recognize Bill Bushka from IHN Samaritan.
Thank you, Ralph. I just have a question on the new language in 1C, and whether that is a provider appealing on their own behalf to OHA. That seems like a contractual arrangement between the provider and the MCE, so just
Right, so there's,
uncertain about it.
I think that the reason this was clarified is we get this question quite a bit in the hearings world of things. And it's when a hearing request comes in and a CCO is working on an appeal that a provider submitted. Providers can appeal decisions that affect them, and those are in the general rules. And so they have their own process. They have to appeal it through the MCE, get a decision notice, and then they have 30 days to appeal it to the authority. So I think this is trying to clarify these rules are intended for providers that are appealing on behalf of the member or helping out the member.
It says on the provider's
Right, but I think, so I think Bill probably makes a very appropriate point that this particular piece, as I look at it, is probably more directly applicable to provider disputes specific to payment arrangements and or contracting that are referenced in general rule, and that this rule does focus on member grievance and appeals, if I'm hearing you right. And I think you're making a fair point that we should go back and look at where this, if this is really the best and most appropriate place for this particular piece to live. Is that?
I think it was added because there's so many questions all the time, and it does indicate that it's trying to distinguish the two.
Okay.
It does say on the provider's own behalf. It doesn't say on behalf of the members.
Okay.
Right, and little b above is for the members.
Right.
Right.
Okay. So I think we need to take a look at that and see if this is in fact where it should live. Sure, Dana?
Dana from Willamette, and I would say if there's a lot of questions about that, then this particular, when people go to this rule, we'll just have a reference to the other rule that applies.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, last chance in the room or on the phone. 410-141-3900. All right, we are going to move on to 410-141-3905, grievances and appeals, expedited case hearings. This was simply revised to improve readability and clarity of content. I have no notable changes to bring to your attention here. With that said, we will still open for comment. And I'm seeing Jessica Sayers first, Sean Parkman from SEIU. May I do a check-in on the phone? Anyone wishing to speak to this particular rule? RAC members. All right. We're actually, Jessica will go Jessica, then trying to give everyone ample opportunity. We'll go back to Holly from the Oregon Law Center and then to Sean. Go ahead, Jessica.
All right, Jessica Sayers, Pacific Source. Really simple edit here on number 5. Talks about 2 working days. That's not language that we use anymore in rules.
Okay.
So I suggest to change that to business days.
Thank you. And Holly, go ahead.
A very short one on 5B. Make reasonable efforts to give the member prompt oral notice of the denial and to follow within 2 days with a written notice.
So 6B, just to make sure we're tracking you.
Yeah, and it
Okay.
might even be reasonable to put that as a C, to follow up with 2 days written notice for clarity, I guess is what I'm trying to catch.
So a request to make follow-up within 2 days, however that day shakes out as a sub-C. All righty, thank you. And we'll come back to Sean.
Thanks. Sean Parkman, SAU. For the record, the same comment, number 1, members, providers, clear the line. And then a more specific comment on 6B.
Okay.
Just a recommendation to the authority to consider making this more explicit, reasonable efforts to give oral notice. So you could, what does that mean for someone that, again, with cognitive disability,
Sure.
or like you could call them and you could have a lawyer tell them something that makes no sense to them. And was that reasonable? Does that meet the letter of this rule?
So potentially reasonable efforts consistent with, and if you choose to want to offer some proposed language now, or just to get a sense of where you're going, consistent with the other elements of access for people with either limited English proficiency or cognitive impairment?
Yes, right.
Okay.
So the intention that I'm trying to convey is that it's not literally just speaking at them, but you're attempting to reach understanding. And the rules, the way that a lot of these rules are written in general, is like, it's to the letter of the law, like technically I have communicated to you, like I have spoken at you. And I'm trying to advocate that, to consider how to, within reason, imply or have rules that are a little more about reaching understanding for people that may need extra help in that understanding. Again, for most people, this is probably going to be fine, but these special vulnerable populations need to reach understanding about what's trying to be communicated to them.
Okay. Thank you for that. We're going to go back to Holly with the Law Center.
I want to make a point on that too. Most of these individuals are not going to have representation. We, Oregon Law Center, is a nonprofit, and we do our very, very best to offer advice and representation when we can, but we are an agency with limited resources. And making things accessible to individuals with disabilities, with learning style differences, with language differences is imperative. And for us, when we give advice and cannot go further with the hearing, we don't always have good background information if members do not have appropriate documentation and the like. So being very precise is important.
Okay. Now, appreciate that. And just as a broad comment, this particular piece of the rule is written for the Oregon Health Authority to comply with. So it is incumbent upon us as a state agency to do what we need to help people understand what's at stake in these particular situations. So thank you for helping us see that. We do appreciate. Anyone else on the phone or in the room that wishes to speak to 3905? All right, I'm going to move us along. 410, 141, 3910, grievances and appeals, continuation of benefits. I'll note that there was a revised version of this posted on August 2nd. Those changes were really specific to one, little a, big A, and big B. Otherwise, the edits in this were really just written to improve readability. So I will take a moment and just by show of hands in the room and or names on the phone if you wish to speak to these changes. And I will note what those changes are for people that don't have that document with. The change in 1A and B, 1A specifically, the 10th day following the date of notice of action / adverse benefit determination. It's been noted already, the comment about notice of action, or the notice of appeal resolution, semicolon, or the effective date of action proposed in the notice. If applicable, whichever is later. So the late addition that was provided or added on October 2nd was the or between big A and big B. It previously said and the inclusion of new language in sub B, whichever is later. So those were the changes specific to this rule. I'm happy to take comments or questions at this time. May I see by show of hands? And give other folks encouragement and in the room. We'll start with Dana Steringer.
I was hoping you would come to me last. I'm still trying to figure out how to word it.
Okay.
I'm still trying to read that.
Okay, I'm happy to, it's Jessica and Sean, happy to come back to them. Just wanted to make sure that we acknowledge everyone else that wishes to speak. Go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, Jessica Sayers, Pacific Source. My comment's on 2B.
Okay.
And it's the last part of that sentence around who is required to pay for services. This is the same comment I made in 3890, section 10, just hoping to align those two.
And speak to that again, if you would. You were hoping that there be a reference to a specific OHP or OHA policy. Help with that.
This refers to or providing services in accordance with the authority policy and regulations. And I think clarity around what those policies and regulations are would be very helpful.
All right, thank you for that. Sean from SEIU.
Thanks. So wherever it is in the rules that a member is taking an action, so for example, one, they may request and receive. There's another one. D, for example, a member withdrawals, etc. So wherever that happens, just again requesting for the record alignment with the decisions around definitions, member or their representative or whatever we're going to go with.
Thank you very much. And Dana, I will do a check-in on the phone to give folks in the room just another moment for pause. Anyone on the phone wish to speak to the proposed changes in 3910? All right. We'll go to Dana, and then I think we'll go back to Holly from the Oregon Law Center, if she wants to. All right, Dana, go ahead.
Okay, so this is, and maybe the lawyer brain has it figured out better than I do, but it's the standard from Willamette. So it sounds to me like in 1A, little a, it's setting it up to say we're trying to give the member the most amount of time to make this request. And so before the sooner of the 10th day that they got the notice that something is being denied, or the effective date of an action that is somewhere in the future, whichever is later. But it seems like we're trying to make them give something prior to something happening, one of the two events, whichever the later event is, it's prior to that event. So I don't understand why we're saying before the sooner of. Or we're either saying before the date, before the 10th day, or before the action takes place, whichever is later. So it's either 10 days or it's maybe that action doesn't take place for 12 days. So we're going to give them until the 12th day. But just the language in A that says before the sooner of.
So it's the sooner that
like
is
it's contradictory to whichever is later.
So
That may be how I'm reading it.
I agree that there there's some clarity issues.
Okay.
And I have another clarity.
Sure. So can I just real quick, Dana, so that I'm tracking, and then we'll welcome Holly. Is it the word the sooner? Is it sooner that is creating?
I think we either need to take out the sooner of or whichever is later.
All right.
Either one.
All right, Holly.
I will clarify that I am not an attorney. I don't know if I have a lawyer brain or not. I don't think so. I would like to address one, uppercase B, lowercase b. Many of our staff have found this to be very confusing, and possibly it should be clarified as the MCE shall allow a late request for continuing benefits if there was good cause for not submitting the request within 10 days following the date of, and so on and so forth.
Thank you. I just want to make sure we get that captured. Yes. Yes. Great. Thank you. Appreciate. All right. Anyone else wishing to speak to 410, 141, 3910? Moving right along. 410, 141, 3915. Again, no notable changes, but happy, and this is our last rule, friends. I'm seeing Jessica Sayers. I'm seeing Bill waving two hands, and we have 40 minutes left, Bill. Can I do a check-in on the phone? Love to hear from RAC participants on the phone. Otherwise, we will go to the room for last call. All right, Jessica, I'm actually going to offer Bill opportunity to go first.
I was joking.
He was joking. Oh, mercy.
Oh, well,
All right.
Sean will pop in
Well, I'm going to go to
instead,
our two stalwarts today, Jessica and then Sean, and then we'll do last call.
Okay. All right, Jessica Sayers, Pacific Source again. I have two comments in this role.
Okay.
First one is number one. This talks about monitoring and providing updates and revisions to the state quality strategy. And I'm wondering if that is trying to infer the TQS in the contract, the quality improvement requirements?
Yes.
Okay, so more clarity around that would be really
Okay.
helpful.
All right.
And then number 5, which looks like it's part of number 4.
Ah, yes, thank you.
So this talks about the grievance and appeals logs being forwarded to the Quality Improvement Committee. And my concern with that is that, one, it doesn't align with the 2020 contract. The 2020 contract, specifically Exhibit I 11C, talks about using the data collected to analyze the system.
Okay.
So the log itself is not going to the QI committee. It's the outcome of the analysis.
Okay.
And so I would ask the OHA to clarify that and align with the contract.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate bringing that to our attention. All right. I'm going to go to Healthcare for All Oregon at the end of the table, and then we'll come back to Sean.
That's okay.
Herbs Healthcare for All Oregon. So that, I wanted to second what you just said, Jessica, because that would also eliminate bringing PHI to the Quality Improvement Committee.
Thank you. All right. Sean Parkman from SEIU.
Thanks. So my question's about transparency and public reporting.
Okay.
So perhaps this is all taken care of. It just seems like this particular section would be relevant. Are all of these reports, this Quality Improvement Committee perhaps is subject to public records? You know, it's like open meetings or whatever. So my question is, like, are these reports that are compiled by OHA currently or intended to be publicly available, you know, either in aggregate or whatever, and if so, is that supposed to be addressed here, or is that addressed somewhere else, or is that in contract?
Sure.
That's just a question.
Sure. So Melissa, I'd hate to put you on spot as Deputy Project Director, but I will nonetheless. Can you speak to contract, and if we need to follow up directly, but the question from Sean was, if the nature of these kinds of reports as it relates to grievances and appeals or other pieces, if there is a contractual obligation that those would be either posted by the plan, or if we, OHA, intend to post this kind of information?
That is an excellent question that we will need to follow up on.
Okay, we will do that. Thank you.
Well, just for the record, I would advocate that that in some form, the end result of all of this grievance work be publicly available, that it be part of a public accountability process. I understand that there would be challenges related to HIPAA and specifics and whatever, so whether this is an aggregate report or whatever, just putting that out there for the record.
Sean, this is Jessica. The OHA actually has those reports available on their website already. There's quarterly and annual updates, and it has all of the CCO data included in that.
And fee for service.
And fee for service, yep.
And thank you for the support from this side of the table and helping to respond. We do appreciate it. All right, last call on the phone. Anyone wishing to speak to 410-141-3915? Anyone in the room? Do I hear any objections from RAC members to adjourning at 11:16? Bill Buska objects. Bill. Some people here might have some questions for you. All right, that is it, everyone. We thank you for your participation and attendance in the room, on the phone. For those of you that are participating in this afternoon's non-emergency medical transportation RAC, that will convene promptly at 1:30 today. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.